Hello, CHistrue here. Happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas. May your winter solstice be a time of light in the midst of winter darkness as the days get longer. Whatever holidays you celebrate, may your holiday season be something favorable and something with blessings and prosperity for all of you. I do not discuss religion very much on the CHistrue channel, although there are some implicit spiritual memes in the continuum hypothesis discussions, namely the ideas of Cantor or some of the kind of modern Neo-Pythagorean concepts that I've discussed. But by and large, I've tried to avoid the subject because it tends to inspire dogmatism on both sides. We have the dogmatism of the religious, and then we have the dogmatism of the atheistic side. And I see a problem here. I see a problem with both, to be honest. And that is both are prepackaged and sold to us by the system. And in both cases, you have the most shallow, uncomplicated, unphilosophical interpretations of either the traditional religious traditions, mainly, let's say, the Abrahamic ones that we would have in the West and in the Middle East. But then, on the other hand, we have the most shallow interpretations of materialism and philosophical materialism. And let me begin with the problem that I think is here with modern religion, and why it is that I wince when I hear Merry Christmas during this time of commercialism and consumerism, or even Happy Hanukkah, because, again, it's often mixed in with consumerism and the shallowness of our particular American form of religion. We have religions on this planet that seem to focus on what's going to happen when we die. They're self-oriented. I'm going to go to heaven. I'm going to ascend to the higher spiritual level. And I just talked to somebody who claimed he was on the higher spiritual level and dialogued with him, and I'm going, if that's a higher spiritual level, and that's the level of empathy that you and others like you have, I count me out of it. Because the very people talking about being raptured, or going to heaven, or going to the higher spiritual level, or benevolent aliens taking them and spiriting them away, are often the least empathetic people and the most reactionary people politically. And the two tend to go together, because it's a focus on self. It's a focus on ego. Even in the supposedly more spiritual East, there's the idea, well, there's the caste system. How do you explain that? Well, it's a focus on me reincarnating and, leaving this wheel of life, but there's no talk of transforming the wheel of life, or very little of it, East or West. And yet, and I assume that all these traditions have their progressive side. I assume there's, progressive Hinduism and progressive Buddhism, and also progressive Christianity, Judaism, Islam, where they are going to talk about how to take that spirituality and transform the world. And that, to me, is what I believe that the religions, all of them, need to go back to. Because they all have that as a core essence in their foundation. When religious people talk about the kingdom of God, they are talking about nothing more and nothing less than a world transformed. This world. Now, they don't realize it because it's all been spiritualized. Because the system, the church in the Middle Ages, the feudal structure, the capitalist structure in the modern West, all of them want us never to challenge or question whether these systems are legitimate or not. And so, what do? They say, well, it's all about heaven. It's all about going up there. No, it isn't. It's about transforming this world right here. It's about the kingdom. If you want to talk about, and I'm talking to believers now, the kingdom of God is this world transformed by you, by me. So that's breaking free of the prison that the system wants to put religion in, where religion's all about inculcating obedience. Romans 13, and you guys need to behave and be good servants and yada yada. The world's seen enough of that. And what we see in the Middle East, the particular form of despotic religion we see in the Middle East, the difference between that and the Judaic-Christian West is more of the difference between the degree to which we've gone through the Enlightenment. That you could find that potential in any of the religions that we've had on the planet. I don't know about indigenous ones, that's a little different, but The Aztecs definitely had their form of it. So I don't feel comfortable exempting anybody, per se. But maybe some here and there. But then people say, well, I've had enough of religion, and I want to escape it, so I'm going to become an atheist, and I'm going to follow Richard Dawkins, I'm going to follow Christopher Hitchens, I'm going to follow Michael Shermer and all these guys. Well, now you're also following the most shallow, you're following something sold to you from the system. The most shallow interpretation of atheistic materialism that's then cut off from its roots in 19th century thought, in 19th century forms of materialism that were often very radical, very revolutionary. These guys are profoundly conservative. Now, I know Dawkins claims he's a liberal and all this stuff, but his recent comments on Down syndrome and eugenics lead me to think that he's not. And Hitchens, he supported the war in Iraq, and Pinker is a so-called realist when it comes to human nature. And I think we know where that leads to, but some form of modified social Darwinism. And so what are these guys, what are they ultimately leading you to believe but to take the worldview handed down to you from the corporation, from DARPA, which funds a lot of scientific research, from 19th century capitalism, and to say that this is reality. Yes, I know, okay, Darwin figured out the mechanics of natural selection and sexual selection. I'm not denying that. I don't think any scientific, rational person would deny that. But he had his biases. Every scientist does. Every human being does. And when you have institutionalized anything, whether it's religion or science, you're going to have institutionalized bias. And so those forms of secular ideology that talked about radical change or utopia became downplayed. The conservatives would attack them for obvious reasons, but even Marx attacked them as being unscientific. Well, what is utopia? Utopia is no place, right? But when every single place has burned you, maybe you give no place a try for a while. So those of you who are atheists, you also have in your tradition a kind of romantic, revolutionary idea of transforming the world. Modern science wants to understand the world. Notice how they want to understand evolution, understand the Big Bang. But when it comes to transforming it, they've cut themselves off from that 18th century, 19th century root of transforming man. It starts to become an elitist thing. It starts to become, well, the rich and white can merge with machines because, and then everybody else just sort of dies from overpopulation and hunger. But that's not the utopian tradition. That is not the root of what the 18th century Enlightenment and the 19th century radical tradition were trying to teach us. They were not trying to teach us that we just understand nature and leave man to himself. By understanding man, we could transform man. Read the works of Erich Fromm. Read the very early writings of Marx before he grew up and grew old and became some dogmatic authoritarian that eventually Lenin would model his society on. But read his early stuff before that happened to him. Okay. Before he became the communist, dogmatic authoritarian that, you would see, whether he ever really did, he seemed to move in that direction. But read the early stuff. Read the left-wing utopian socialist writers or the anarchists. And what you will see is a hope for transformation of the world not that different than what those of you in the religious camp also have in your tradition, that Cornel West talks about, that Michael Lerner talks about, the prophetic social justice tradition. They want us to escape to heaven on the one hand, or maybe for you in the science camp, to merge with computers, to do I love the movie Interstellar. Okay, it was great. I loved it. It was awesome. But the idea of merging into the fifth dimension or machines, that's not that different than those in the religious camp who just talk about the soul going to heaven. No, it's about getting out of the prison of ego and joining with others. Conspiracy Dude, I've had my differences with him, as you know from my videos, but he did talk about the idea of getting out of the cube, of busting free of the cube. And that cube, by the way, is the human ego in my interpretation. And he was right about that. So folks, let's get out of the cube. God bless you on this holiday season, and thank you for watching.